Hotel Reverie is the third episode of Season 7 of Black Mirror, and before going into anything, I want to say Emma Corrin absolutely smashed this. I'm not super familiar. I've seen clips of other works, but mainly it's Deadpool and Wolverine that I've seen them perform in fully, and that was a great performance. Here, it's a great performance. It seems like whatever they're given, they do to the absolute best of their ability. It does mean that Issa Rae perhaps doesn't shine as much, but I still think her performance was fine as Brandy. But really, Emma Corrin is the star of the show. Now, sadly, I don't like to look, as I've said before, whatever's out there. I like to come at it with my own impression, my own opinion. But sometimes I'll forget cast names, so I have to look up, and you find these bits of information, it just trickles in. And I did see something where heteronormative weirdos, let's call them what they are complaining online as to why Brandy's all of a sudden a lesbian. Because Clara makes sense, because she's written to like Alex, and as we find out, Dorothy seemed to have romantic attraction to a woman, even though at that time that wasn't really the done thing, so she had to hide it. But with Brandy, she's an actress, she's a modern woman, etc. The counterpoint, and I did see this online as well, which is perfect, is how do you know that she's not lesbian? Nothing in her introduction really gives any indication to her sexuality. So I don't see an issue with her suddenly being lesbian, because at the end of the day, this is kind of my smoking gun on it, she took the role wanting to be the replacement for the male lead. There was no expectation from what was explicitly stated in the show that the Clara role would be recast as a man or any other expression. So it's fine. At the end of the day, it's a story, it was written by someone, they wanted them to be lesbians. That's the smoking gun, actually better than the other one. But there's a lot of Easter eggs in this, and I'm not going to go through all of them because, again, that isn't my focus for these kind of things. We've got the White Bear poster that we see, we've got Space Fleet references here, there, and everywhere, setting up for the end of the season. We have a Demon 79 thing on YouTube, which is also where we see a reference to Loch Henry, because Pia is the name, or Pia's movie something. It'll be on screen now, but that's the account that uploaded the bits of Dorothy, etc. So there's a lot of callbacks and a lot of links there. I do appreciate that, but because once we get into the remake of Hotel Reverie, it wouldn't make sense to have these, so I'm kind of glad that it's mostly front-loaded. But of course, when she goes in to do the reading, what she thinks is a reading, she doesn't realise she's going to be doing the whole thing now. Luckily, it's established she's done theatre, so she's used to playing in one go, as it were. But we get the nubbin, they call it a mesmerizer here. It's become Black Mirror, all these little things attached to the temple. But once she's in there, we have this moment of, oh, wait, this is what we're doing. That realisation that you're basically just remaking it live. And I can totally understand the fear, the discomfort. Again, one of the things that people complain, like, why was the hair not done properly? It's because she wasn't expecting it, because the USB stick dropped, so she didn't get all that. She knew the script, she had the film, not that she needed either because she knows it that well. But yeah, it's like she wasn't expecting to be filming it. So again, totally put that one to bed. But there is, whilst there is a big emotional core to this episode, there is also some humour. The piano scene in particular was one that made me chuckle because, again, she didn't have the explanation from the USB stick that brief, so she went in thinking they'll just do it in post. So it did become quite humorous. But there is one moment where everything starts to cascade and cause problems. And that's when she accidentally calls her Dorothy. I don't know if the explanation works. Again, it's not really an area that exists, so it's all very much in the writer's head. Whatever they want to say to make it work is fine. But this whole idea of like, oh yeah, we had to use elements of her performance, which Dorothy put elements of herself into Clara, so calling her Dorothy helped her access more of Clara, but unless it was explicitly coded in, how would it be there? It's one of those where it's a bit wishy-washy, but hand wave it away, accept it, go on the ride as intended by Charlie Brooker. But that moment of the pivot kind of leads me into what my overall kind of idea of this episode is. Whilst it is a beautiful sapphic love story, it's also about this whole idea of AI being used to, in some cases de-age actors. That's kind of fine. It's one of those where could we not find younger actors who look similar? But I can understand it. But the one I really don't like is reviving dead actors or similar, which is basically what they're doing here. They're reviving dead actors. Same as has happened with James Dean, Audrey Hepburn, others. Throughout the years, we've had sort of these deep fakes done And one of the benefits to studios, etc., is virtual actors can't strike because they're not self-aware. They're not going to complain about working environment because they don't know what a working environment should be. They don't emote, they don't feel any more than is coded into them. But in something like this, which is more, much more developed than the AI we have now, this sense of self starts to creep in. And that's where the ethical dilemma takes a new direction, because I think ethically, using AI to recreate actors, etc., means that you're robbing actual actors' roles and jobs. Because, like I say, you could get makeup on someone, you could do all sorts of stuff to cheat it. And I think that, it is a bad idea, and I'm glad that there's been pushback, and I still think there should be a lot more pushback against the use of AI in this kind of situation. But like I say, this exact situation causes another ethical dilemma, because if now she's got some sense of identity, she's a sort of... I've put her in my notes as Clara Dorothy, because she's got elements of both. The character is written, but the actress behind it. And once she, as they call it, once she enters the fringe and gets that data dump of what happened and remembers Dorothy's life, which again, how would she, because she's not really Dorothy, but based on what she understands from the world, everything about Dorothy, she understands who she is. And of course they live this life that, again, hand-wavy thing of the time is faster in the system whilst they're not in control. There is that kind of moment of when it's towards the end, when they're going to bring everything back to normal, reset to an earlier point that was stable and start from then. In essence, Clara Dorothy will die. As I've termed her. This Clara that is infused with as much Dorothy as possible. She will die. But she has lived and loved for however long with Brandy. And it's kind of like the Voyager episode, because I like to cross over my sci-fi and fantasy loves. But the Star Trek Voyager episode, Tuvix. At the end, it's the idea of it's two people put together, two characters, Tuvok and Neelix, who are very opposed. If you've never seen it, they're basically like chalk and cheese personality-wise, so it's kind of funny in that. But this unified person is its own person. At the end of the episode, there is an ethical quandary of do we separate it and get the original people back, because technically they don't exist anymore, so that's two lives technically ended. But to do that, you've got to effectively kill this one. Now, this one wouldn't have existed without the accident that created them, and in the end of the episode, they do, two is better than one. I guess the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. But that's it here. It's that same idea of they are effectively killing someone that, yes, didn't exist before an accident happened, but still will be killed. Because even though it's reset and Clara still exists as a character, it's not the same version at all. And I totally understand Brandy's emotional, emptiness towards the end of the episode. And of course, when the ending's changed, it does hit very hard. I agree entirely with The Room, and particularly with Judith herself.
Do you think it worked? The ending? Did it for me?
It does absolutely, work on me as well. So once we get that final gift, which yes is addressed to Junipero Hills, I see what you did there. We have this gift of a version of Dorothy, not Clara as Dorothy. This is actually Dorothy that Brandy can communicate with. She can maybe build a relationship. Now, as long as this doesn't reset between booting up of the application, she will be able to heal from this. I think having the ability to gain closure in this sense is going to be really useful for Brandy. But if you couldn't tell, I do love this episode. It's got its flaws. There's a lot of stuff you've just got to accept as part of the process. But I do think that this is a strong episode. I know some people hate it for whatever reason. It doesn't always have to be, the woke stuff, as some people like to call it. You can have issues with other parts of it, and that's totally fine. Everyone's got their own opinions. But I thought this worked very well. And it once again shows that Black Mirror is capable of a range of stories, as long as it's still got this, the world 5 minutes in the future feel to it. So, yeah. Hotel Reverie is definitely in my top 10 list, maybe top 5. But next week we have Peter Capaldi and a return to the world of Bandersnatch. So I do hope you'll join me for that and everything else coming down the line. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll be yours forevermore.